Welcome to the 21 Days of Prayer podcast. Let's lean in today as we talk about praying for difficult people in difficult situations. Stephen, are you more of an optimist or a pessimist, or do you think there's middle ground? Do you like a glass half full or glass half empty, or just chug the glass no matter what it looks like? Like what do you like?
I'm definitely what I would call a realist.
Okay.
Which I pretty much over time in my maturity have realized it's a pessimist.
A realist is just a pessimist who
Yeah.
doesn't want to say it. Yeah. Pessimist that smiles. I like that. Yeah, I don't know what I am. I would probably be more of a realist.
I always see what's missing.
But I try to see the good in situations. I'm trying to, like, when somebody's talking about a problem, I'm trying to find the good things so that I don't have to listen to them talk about their problems, which I think is I think that's a flaw. Like, I need to be able to listen to people talk about what's going on.
You're trying to find what's good because you can only see what's bad.
Yeah.
Pessimist.
Yeah. That's probably true. What about difficult people? You got any difficult people in your life?
No, everybody's
Really?
awesome.
You love everyone. Yeah.
I mean,
if this wasn't recorded, would you be bringing up people right now?
Listen, if you don't
they be
know
in
who
our
the
church?
difficult people are in your life, then
Yeah.
you are the difficult person.
Now
So
that actually might be.
I think I might be
Or
that
if
difficult.
everyone else is the difficult person, then you might also be the difficult person.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all
exactly.
have those difficult people.
Yeah.
Like, I think about, for us, a common theme would be Nathan. I mean, he's just definitely the most difficult person that you and I.
Difficult. That's
man.
saying it nicely.
No, we're just messing with him. This is what happens when he lets us do it on our own. Is he just gets thrown under the bus?
Yeah, he's not here. But I'll tell you what, Nathan is like the eternal optimist.
Yeah, he
Like,
is. He is.
My
He's
goodness.
so bubbly.
The cup is overflowing.
Yeah.
He's got more water than.
I know. He can come into a room that is just dead and dull and turn it into a lively party in like 30 seconds. He just has that gift.
okay.
It's crazy. But we all have difficult people in our lives, right? I mean, that's just a thing where you can't escape it if you want to live or in and around any other people ever in your life. You're going to come across a Karen. You're going to come across a person if your name's Karen,
really
you know what?
Nice Karen.
If you don't know about that and your
feel bad
name's
for them.
Karen, just pretend like you didn't hear that. But if you do know about that, then we can all joke in good nature about Instagram and internet memes.
Yeah.
But, we all know these difficult people that you run into every now and then, or maybe sometimes more than every now and then, that are just hard to get along with. And what I love about the Bible, one of the many things I love about the Bible, is that the Bible doesn't just gloss over that. The Bible is not a glass half full book. It's not a glass half empty book either. It's very real. It's real life stuff. And Paul deals with this in 1 Corinthians. He was one of the guys that helped start this church in Corinth, this city where he's writing this letter to. And if you know the Bible, in the New Testament, there's 1 and 2 Corinthians. So he had to write 2 letters. So that right ahead just makes you go,
They're
maybe.
pretty long too.
Yeah, and they are. They're 2 of the longest books in the New Testament. And so you're kind of going, man, I wonder, was everything okay there? And then if you start to get into it, you realize not only was it a little bit questionable there, but it was messy in 1 and 2 Corinthians. Like, the people in Corinth would have been what Paul classified as the difficult people in his lives. You and I were joking about some of the situations that are not YouTube appropriate. Like, that's how bad some of the stuff is here in 1 Corinthians. We're really clickbaiting y'all. Like, if we can't get you to listen to this podcast today, you won't listen to any of them. But I mean, there's stuff in 1 Corinthians that blow your mind, where you're like, I can't believe that people would go to church.
Just say it,
and
Matthew.
brag
What was
about
happening
that.
in this
No,
church?
No. We can't go deep. We
Y'all
could
are
just
going to
say
have
that,
to read for yourself.
let's just say this. In one example, there's people who are going to the communion services and drinking the wine to get drunk rather than to remember the death of Jesus. So that's like the most calm way that we can put it.
That person
but
was
there's
probably a deacon.
Yeah. No, he's the one setting up the communion beforehand. Those would be the guys we would trust. These are the difficult people. And yet, what I want us to look at in 1 Corinthians is the very first chapter, that some of the very first words that Paul writes. It helps us so much in prayer to consider this. This is what Paul says in verse 2. He's telling in this letter who he's writing to. He says, to the church of God in Corinth. That's the beginning of verse 2. Man, that statement right there alone would have caused hilarity among all the different Jews in this region to think that there were people of God in Corinth. God doesn't have people in Corinth. Like, Corinth is almost like a Las Vegas type place. It's like nothing good happens in Corinth. Like, there can't be God's people there, right? Yet what Paul calls these people is the church of God. Even though they're the most difficult people that Paul maybe had to deal with, most difficult Christians, I should say. He dealt with some pretty difficult secular people. But I mean, these people had so many problems, and yet he doesn't just start railing on them. He doesn't just start telling them how bad they are or anything. He starts out saying, to the church of God. And he goes on to say that they're sanctified, that they're called to be saints together. Like he's looking at these messed up church and he says they're sanctified in Christ Jesus. He says they're called to be saints. And then verse 4, this is where I think we can talk about prayer a lot, is in verse 4 when Paul says, I give thanks to my God always for you. I mean, these are the most difficult people that he knows. And he's saying, I'm always thanking God for you. I'm praying for you all the time. I'm directing a prayer of thanksgiving to God for the most difficult people that I know. I mean, his ability here to be thankful and rejoice in the good that he sees in people, despite the bad that he also sees in these people in Corinth. He's still able to thank God for things. I think that is just so incredibly important as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, to not be so overemphasizing the good or overemphasizing the bad, but being able to see people as both without fixating on one, on just one of their issues or on one of their great things, but being able to see both and go, I'm just going to thank God for this person in any way that I can.
That's a really hard place to get to.
It is.
But I think it's from where Paul's actually starting with. He's a missionary. Right. He's a church planner, and he cares about them. And Paul understands this concept that people are the mission. Mm-hmm. So without them, he's not trying to build some other thing. He's trying to reach people. Right. He's trying to care for them. And so he's thankful for anyone that he can impact, anyone that he could possibly be on mission with or for or towards. And that includes the difficult people. So his heart's in the right place to begin with, that allows him to be thankful and praise God for these people. When they come to mind, he's thanking God that they're in his life, because he's ultimately thanking God for the mission, for what he's been called to and for what's going on. But we see people as a hindrance, a problem. We wish they were out of our lives. And ultimately, we're trying to remove the mission from our life.
Yeah. And Paul sees difficult people as like, oh, this is a great opportunity for God to get glory through this person. And so instead of thinking about how they're going to impact him, he's thinking about how God could save them, how God could bless them, how God could be a part of their story. And so it's just like, I mean, that's a great point to make, that it starts a lot with the way Paul was thinking, before he ever even gets to verse 4 or even chapter 1. It's just kind of who God had made him to be. But I think, man, for us, as we think about prayer, we really need to get better at asking Jesus to help us see his church that way. The people around us. I don't mean the building, of course. We're talking about people. Like you said, people are the mission. To asking Jesus, say, help me see these people in this light. Help me to see them accurately. Help me to see the people around me and respond rightly to them, whether they're the most difficult people or the easiest people or somewhere in between. Jesus, help me to see that. I think that's such a great prayer to be able to pray, is asking God to help us to understand these things and see these things appropriately so that we can respond rightly, not only in prayer, but even when we're, actually relating to those people.
Yeah. So the question comes back, glass half full, glass half empty.
Right.
And I think it's got to conclude that you've got to see the possibilities of what could be in that glass with things that we don't see in people, and being thankful for them and what God has us in their lives for. And I like it that Paul didn't give up. That's why there's a second letter.
Yeah, that's why he's writing the first one.
They didn't get it right. I told them, why aren't they listening?
Right.
Like, they don't get it, discard them. He's like, no, got a second letter. And he returns and still dealing with even more issues at this point.
Right. And it doesn't all fix itself after one Spirit-inspired letter. So, like, one prayer may not fix all of the problems. Yeah. But it will definitely be part of what God uses to, if nothing else, to change the way we see things. Mm-hmm. I think this is especially important if the problems that we're thinking about in prayer are people-specific. We've talked a lot about difficult people, but there could also be difficult situations. But especially if the problems are people, are we viewing these people as problem producers, or like what Paul's talking about here, gratitude producers? Like, for Paul, they're a reason to give thanks, not a reason to complain, not a big problem to him. Yes, they have some very difficult stuff as you read through the letter, but but he's able to see them as gratitude producers, not problem producers. And I think when we're dealing with other people loved by God, created in his image, that's the way we got to start thinking about it is, I want to make this person a gratitude producer in my life, not a problem producer. So, man, today let's think about some of those problem areas, some of those people who might be causing us issues, some of the difficult struggles, the difficult people that we might deal with on a daily basis, and ask God to help us see them the way that he sees them. Ask God to help us see them not as problem producers, but as a reason for you and I to thank God. Let's open our mind, not to be optimistic only and not be realists like Stephen and I were talking about, but let's think deeper and ask God to help us to see them as people who can help us glorify God and thank God for all that he's done in them and in us through them, instead of just people who cause problems. And I think that would be a great way to start today as we think about how we're going to pray more effectively over these 21 days.